Hey, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock Central here in the great state of Texas, and this is the fifth edition of On the Phone. Our guest today is an extremely well-traveled and a very highly experienced salesperson and sales trainer, and he has helped countries and companies and salespeople around the world improve their sales skills. And I'm excited to spend some time with him today and let him share his wisdom. It's time to On the Phone. All right, everybody, welcome back. Excited to have you here on this bright and sunny Wednesday morning. I want to tell you a little bit about my guest today. His name is Dave Kurlan. He's a best-selling author, top-rated speaker, and he earned the bronze medal for top sales and marketing thought leader in 2015. He's the founder of and CEO of Objective Management Corp, OMG. You can interpret that as much as you'd like. He's also the leading developer of Salesforce evaluations and sales candidate assessments, headquartered in Westborough, Massachusetts. OMG was named the top sales assessment tool for 2011 through 15, so a nice 5-year run. He's also the CEO of Kurlan Associates, a global leader in Salesforce development. He's an expert on all facets of sales leadership, sales strategy, sales process, sales recruiting, sales training, coaching, and consulting. His two companies have appeared several times on the Inc. 5000, which is the 5,000 fastest growing small companies in the U.S. And also he's been a top-rated speaker at Inc. Magazine's conference on growing the company, the Fortune Sales and Marketing Summit, the Sales and Marketing Management Magazine, Sales Management Conference, Sales 2.0 Conference, Inbound 2014. I guess there's an Outbound conference now, is what I understand.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's actually in about 2 weeks or a week, and then hundreds of other events. He's been featured on radio, television, and print, including World Business Review, Business Week Online, Inc. Magazine, Selling Power, Sales and Marketing Management Magazine, and Sales Magazine, and dozens of other publications. He is also the author of the best-selling book, Baseline Selling: How to Become a Sales Superstar by Using What You Already Know About the Game of Baseball. And he has also written Star, a proprietary recruiting manual for hiring salespeople, and is the author of Understanding the Salesforce. And his blog is available, and we'll be showing his blog post link coming shortly. So, hope I left enough time for us to talk. That's a pretty impressive resume you got there, sir.
Yeah, I want to apologize. I sent you the wrong bio. I sent you the long one. I meant to send you the short one, and I made you a liar because those awards that had those nice 5-year runs, those are really 10-year runs.
I hate that.
That was an outdated bio.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
I apologize. No, that's okay. No, I mean, that's fine. It's impressive, even if it's outdated, even if it's 5 years old, it was impressive.
Makes me sound old.
What's that?
Makes me sound old.
I know, don't you hate that? So, well, look, I'm excited to have you here today, and I was even more excited to find out that we're from the same neck of the woods. So that's cool. You're out in Westborough, Massachusetts right now?
That's right. And you said you grew up around here.
Well, I grew up in Nashville, New Hampshire. So, right, 45 minutes north of Boston, and then I lived in Charlestown and West Roxbury. So that's my home. Your home is my home.
Mi casa, su casa.
Yeah, exactly right. Cool. Well, let's just get into it. Let's start it. I mean, you've created a huge following for yourself, and your website says you've worked with 200 different industries. It seems like lots of industries and companies and people around the United States and all over the world. Like, how did you get into this? In 1985 is when you started. So, how did you get into this line of work?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think it's a testimony to goal setting. Okay. So when I was in college, the job I had in college was what a lot of college kids get roped into doing, and that's selling knives door to door.
Cutco?
And Cutco, of course. And 99 out of 100 college kids do that for a week. And I was just too dumb. I did it for 3 years. I didn't know that I was supposed to quit after a week. And in a high turnover business like that, one of the things that happens is that you get promoted very quickly if you stick around. So since I stuck around, I became a sales manager, and I think there were a few different levels of sales management. And a couple things happened. One, the the people I hired didn't quit. They stuck around. And 2, the people I hired responded to me. And 3, they sold stuff. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was 19 years old. But people bought from me. People responded to me, and I seemed to be having some success keeping them interested and motivated and succeeding. And somewhere during that 19-year-old year, I said, I think when I grow up, I would like to be in a business where I'm helping salespeople succeed. So that was a goal I set as a 19-year-old, and I had a date. Wow. By the time I was 30, I had no idea what that business would be. I knew nothing. So I gave myself basically 10 years to figure out what it was I was doing that was working. And just before my 30th birthday, a month before my 30th birthday in 1985, I started Kurlan and Associates.
Okay. Wow. And it's interesting because, you know, a lot of people use sales as kind of a default career, as I'm sure you found out. Like,
right.
They go to school, right? They go to school, they get a degree. I'm going to go work in advertising. I'm going to work in this. And then it's not fulfilling. They don't get what they want. And somebody says, hey, I think you'd be good at sales. And they're like, okay, why don't I do that? So you're a rare breed.
Right. Almost everybody in the profession got in by accident.
Yeah.
And why doesn't anybody choose selling? Because when the high schools have career nights, there's like 30 careers on the list. Sales doesn't even show up on the list.
That's because all those salespeople are out selling and working because they can't go and talk, right? So
that's right.
So you're a rare breed. It's rare for that. So that, you know, that speaks to your passion of in the sales industry. So obviously that's translated well for you over the last 36 years now. So that's great.
Oh my God, you're making me feel old again.
I dated you. I'm sorry. I just did the math for
Is this going to be a common theme, making me feel old?
I don't know. Am I in control of your feelings? I wasn't aware. If I am, please let me know and I'll stop.
I love that.
So anyway, so let's talk about baseline.
I can't help it. I can't stay serious for too long.
Listen, I'm all about the joking around. Let's have some fun. So let's talk about baseline selling. You wrote a book around it. It's metaphorically attached to baseball. Can you kind of give us a little bit of insight there?
Sure. I wrote the book in 2004, 2005. And at that particular point in time, 16 years ago, I was so frustrated with how difficult it was to get salespeople easily trained. You know, the processes were complicated. They were complex. Nobody could remember what they were supposed to do next. There were acronyms. It was just overdone. The people in our business had complicated it to the degree where nobody could figure out what they were supposed to do. And it was really the golden age for teaching people to sell consultatively. While a consultative approach had been around since the late 60s, hadn't really gained a lot of steam. People were still struggling with that. So I needed to find a way to easily help people understand what sales process was. Because back then, 91% of salespeople weren't following a sales process. 91%. It still sucks. It's 46% today.
Okay.
You know, so it's better, but it still sucks. So I needed to find an easier way to get them to embrace sales process, to get them to embrace a proper sequence of a sales process, to understand the stages of a sales process. It was right around the time CRM was starting to come together. You know, that transition from ACT to actual bona fide CRM applications. I wanted a way to visually show a pipeline so you could take a look and you knew what was in the pipeline. And I wanted a way to make a consultative approach to selling more accessible. You know, because at that time, the most popular consultative approach was spin, and nobody could do it. It was too freaking hard. And people were confused about the difference between sales process and methodology. And spin was a methodology. It wasn't a process. The entirety of spin took place in the discovery call. So
that was pretty much it, right?
I thought there was just a huge need for something that would simplify yet better explain and do a better job showing salespeople how to take a consultative approach and apply it universally. So I love baseball. and baseball was my number one passion, and selling was number two. So I threw them in a pot together and stirred it up and came up with baseline selling, where the 4 bases represent the 4 generic stages of a sales process. Where a process goes from suspect to prospect, qualified to closable. And each of those, we laid each of those stages out along a base path to make it easy to visualize, and then put the milestones for each stage, generically, the milestones for each stage in that process. But I also wanted to make it so that any company could get a custom sales process by marrying together their own best practices to a sales cycle with the best practices in baseline selling, so that out the other end comes a company's custom, staged, visualized, milestone-centric, customer-focused, best practices sales process. So that's the complicated answer for.
No, that's a great answer. And I think, the book certainly has merit. And even though you wrote it when you wrote it, it's still as applicable today as it was then. I find that, generating leads is easy these days compared to the way it used to be with all the online sources you have. You can get leads just about anywhere these days. So lead generation is not the problem. I think the biggest challenge salespeople have today is between the suspect and prospect phase, really determining who to work with. And I think a lot of that has to do because people are afraid to ask the right questions, or they don't know what questions to ask. And so they kind of, we call it, what do you call it? The shotgun approach, where you shoot buckshot and you hope you hit the bird, where if you would just take a little time and have some qualification questions and have a very clear idea. Because, I say to my clients, I'm like, you can't go to McDonald's and get lasagna, right? You can't go to Burger King and get shrimp cocktail. And the reason you can't do that is because they have a business model and they adhere to it very strictly because it works, right? You can't be everything to all people. So you got to make sure that you know what your avatar is, your ideal client profile, and then you sort and sift based on that for the people you're going to take to the next phase. So,
and I would add 2 things to your. One of the things you said was maybe they're afraid, and one of the things was maybe they don't know how. I would add to that, maybe they lack the proper messaging to get people's attention and get them engaged. And this happens so much. Maybe they suck on the phone. I mean, they just sound awful. It happens every day. We're working with a sales team, and we get through the messaging. So everybody has the messaging. Everybody has their openers. And we're teaching them to do something as simple as introduce themselves. Hi, Wally, it's Dave Kurlan. 5 freaking words. And I can't get them to do it. I mean, they say, hi, Wally, it's Dave Kurlan. I mean, I wouldn't want to talk to that person. And I would say, you need to add a little more life to that. Okay. Hi, Wally, it's Dave Kurlan. That sounded the same as your first attempt. Kind of let go. Kind of have fun. Kind of just pretend you're calling your best friend in the world with World Series tickets. Try again. Hi, Wally, it's Dave Kurlan. Like, that's not going to get it done. They don't want to talk to you if you sound like that. Let me model it again. Hi, Wally, it's Dave Kurlan. Now you try it. Hi, Wally, it's Dave Kurlan. I'm like, okay, this is being recorded. Go back and listen to yourself. You sound like shit. Come on.
I think
that's a big problem. People call and they're reading a script and they sound dry and they're boring. And who would ever want to engage with them?
Nobody. No, and I spend a lot of my time.
Well, there is a lonely grandmother down the street that might go for it.
Somebody who hasn't talked to me in 4 weeks who may need anybody to talk to.
But no B2B person, executive, manager, CEO that's busy is going to take the time to go any longer than the first breath where they go, not interested, and click. And people don't understand why. I'm making all the calls and nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody's interested. Well, nobody's interested. You sound like death.
You might not even get an I'm not interested. You might get the obligatory click, right? Yeah. So, well, that's a good segue because, my universe is helping people sell on the phone and overcome sales call reluctance, whether it's...
I knew that about you.
And I appreciate that. Thank you. Very kind of you. So, You're well traveled. I
And it
appreciate
doesn't
that
have
stuff.
anything to do with the fact that the banner says phone sales secrets and that your
Yeah.
background says phone sales secrets.
Other
I
than
just
that,
knew
you would
that
not
about
know.
you.
I know. I try not to make it obvious. So, but the big, like I specialize in, phone skills in general, but also helping people overcome sales call reluctance. And so, but one of the things that I maintain is that long into the future, you still need to be able to make a phone sale. You need to be able to make a phone call. And I don't care how many leads you generate. Even if you get them to the front door, you still got to get them to come to the front door. So I personally believe that you're going to need phone sales skills for the rest of your sales career, long into the future, irrespective of what technology does to our industry. I'm just kind of interested in your thought process, and based on what you're thinking about for the future, and where you see the role of the phone in the sales process going forward, even with all the automation and the generation that's out there and all social media that's available.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay.
And right now, today, if you had to schedule a meeting, even if you have inbound leads coming through, you still have to have a conversation.
Mhm.
I know I wouldn't want to schedule a first meeting with a potential client because an inbound lead came in. I'd still want to have a quick conversation with them first to make sure that they were minimally qualified, that they were in my sweet spot, that I'd want them as a client. But more importantly, there is so much noise in your inbox. And that now includes the LinkedIn inbox, right? There's just noise with solicitations. And whether it's email, whether it's LinkedIn, people are being bombarded with cold solicitations. But my business phone, which is sitting off here to the right, and just for the viewers who don't know what it looks like, it's this.
What is that?
This is old school. This goes back to like 2007. This rings twice a week. That's it. Twice a week. And they're cold calls. Okay. Anybody who wants to reach me sends me a message in my email. Nobody calls. They just don't call. But I do get the cold call from the people selling commercial real estate, wanting to know when my lease expires. And I do get the call from the occasional stockbroker. And I do get the call from the occasional phone seller that's selling phone services. And always get a call from a local printing company.
Yeah.
Selling printers. But what are they doing? They want to know when my printer lease expires. But that people aren't using the phone. They have all gone to email. They have all gone to InMail. And if you want to separate yourself from all the noise, please use the phone. I mean, when it rings, I'm like, call.
You don't even care if it's a cold call. You're like, hey, someone's using my phone.
And one of the things we learned during the pandemic, back in the heart of lockdown in April and May, people were answering their phones. They were picking up and answering their phones.
Yeah.
People were enjoying talking to each other. They needed to talk to each other. So just because we're post-lockdown and coming out the back end of the pandemic doesn't mean that people aren't going to answer their phones anymore. And the other thing that happened over the last 15 months is that everybody's calls started getting forwarded to their cell phone. So it doesn't matter that they're in their office, they're not in their office, they're working remotely, they're in the car, they're getting the call now. So use the freaking phone.
I love it. You heard it
Other
here
than that, I have no opinion.
No, just a passing thought on your part.
Yeah.
Talk to me about you wrote Understanding the Salesforce. Why did you write that?
Well, everything's an interesting story. So that's my blog. And I was one of the first business bloggers in the world. I started blogging in 2005. And so now I'm homing in on 2,000 articles. So everything I've thought that I would have put in a book has gone into a blog article. And my original goal was to experiment with this blogging format and put enough 20-minute bits of information into the blog so that after a year I'd have written a sales management book.
Mhm.
At the time, I didn't have the 2 hours a day to just devote to writing, but I did have
Mhm.
20 minutes. So I was
Mhm.
writing an article every other day on sales management and sales leadership.
Mhm.
And at some point, the blog took on a life of its own. And I found it to continue being easy enough to spend 20 minutes writing an article here and there, rather than devote that 2-hour block of time to a book. And after 2,000 articles, I can't make a book out of that. There's just too much stuff to go through.
Right.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
so instead, I have an award-winning blog.
Absolutely.
And
And
anything you would want to know about sales, sales management, sales leadership, sales assessments, business is in there.
well, that's how I found you. I was on LinkedIn, and then somehow somebody posted one of your blog posts and reposted it, and I'm like, oh, look at that. That's cool. And so now I read your blog however it comes out, and I see it, and we've been connected on LinkedIn for a couple of years now.
You could probably even hear me in my blog articles because I write the same way that I think out loud.
Sometimes that's a good thing. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not good to sound like, to write like you talk. In certain instances, especially blog, I think, your voice needs to be heard and people need to pick it up and how you would say it. I think that's a great way to help them relate to you for sure.
Yeah. And I'm an analogy guy. The book, Baseline Selling, a big analogy, right? And I use a lot of sports analogies, but almost every blog article starts with an analogy from life that everybody can relate to, and then picks it up and makes the pivot towards something sales management, or sales leadership.
Right. And that's how we link the known and the unknown. Metaphors and analogies allow us to link things that are, so for sure.
It's also how you hook people into the article.
For instance, because nobody wants to read another blog that says, hey, are you not making connection with the right people? You know what I'm saying? So what do you think the toughest thing is facing salespeople today? Is it the noise? You mentioned the noise. Is that is that it still, or is there something else?
I think in terms of connecting and getting a first meeting, it's all that noise that you've got to be able to cut through. But selling really takes place once we have that first meeting scheduled. It's after all the marketing's been done. It's after all the reach outs have been done. And then we have a similar challenge. It's not noise, but it's certainly differentiation, right? Because what virtual selling did is it made every competitor, no matter how far away, just as close as right down the street. It neutralized the distance situation. You're as local and as far away as everybody else. So that's more competitors. And how do we differentiate from everybody else? So we're talking about value. We're talking about a consultative approach. And most salespeople can't do that. OMG's latest data says that only 15% of all salespeople have the skills and the attributes to sell consultatively. And why is that? Well, out of the 12 attributes of a consultative seller, the two biggest ones are the ability to listen and ask questions. And salespeople don't listen very well, and they don't ask questions very well. They can't wait to present. And there's a sales DNA issue too. You deal with call reluctance, which is the essence of sales DNA. So to listen effectively, salespeople need to be able to stay in the moment. Right here, right now. What just happened is gone. What hasn't happened yet, it hasn't happened. It's just making the most of right this second. To do that, you've got to be able to control your emotions. You can't get in your head. You can't be thinking. My first book was called Mindless Selling. It was all about staying in the moment so that you could listen and ask questions. And way too many salespeople can't control what's going on in their head. They're worrying, they're panicking, they're getting excited, they got happy years, they're thinking 3 moves ahead like it's a chess game. They're still upset over the thing they said that they shouldn't have said, and they're thinking, one more question and I can present. So that's
like you're checking boxes, right? Yeah. I check all these boxes. Yeah.
So, and if they can't listen actively, then they're not going to ask the right next question. And way too many salespeople have another sales DNA problem. They need to be liked. And when you need to be liked, you're worrying about what he thinks about you. And they worry that if they ask one more question, the prospect's going to hate them, or the prospect's going to get uncomfortable, or the prospect's going to feel pressure. I mean, in a good consultative conversation, the salesperson's probably going to ask 45 or 50 questions. And it's hard to get salespeople past 4 or 5 that don't sound like a checklist. But it needs to be conversational. So they need to listen and ask questions. Sales DNA prevents them from listening and from asking questions. So the default is back to that transactional approach where they're just talking about their company and talking about themselves and talking about what they do, talking about what they have, and they default to bullet points and features and benefits and talking points and messaging, and they don't differentiate. They sound like every other horrible salesperson that's out there. That's the biggest challenge.
I see that. And to your point, like you said, the more you're thinking about what you need to say next, the less you can listen and have that conversation, right? But I think the other thing is if you ask somebody enough questions and engage them enough, they'll tell you everything you need to know to sell to them anyway.
That's right.
They'll tell you everything you need to know. They'll tell you how to sell to them if you just listen, not only just to the words they're saying, but tone of voice, and you read between the lines, and you're like, and that requires some emotional intelligence as well.
And curiosity.
Natural curiosity.
Yeah.
Like when somebody says something and your spidey sense is tingling, you should go, maybe I should ask about that because that sounds interesting.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So then, interestingly enough, we got about 5 minutes here. Another good dovetail. What do you think selling in 2022 and beyond is going to be like? Just in light of what's happened with the pandemic and the need and desire to be online with social media and all these other things, and having other ways than people think with phone calls or emails to manufacture sales. What's that look like for you in 2022 and beyond?
I think there's 2 categories for looking at that. There's how we're going to sell, and I think it'll be a hybrid approach. I don't think there'll be as much in-person selling as there used to be, but it's not going to be as completely virtual as it was for much of the last year, where salespeople are needed by their customers. They'll be in the field. At key moments for big deals, they'll be face-to-face. But I think we've proven after 15 months that we can all sell virtually. So where it makes sense to continue selling virtually, it's a big time saver, and it's more efficient, it's more cost effective, and the reach is bigger. Think about some of those territory salespeople who rarely got to the extremities of their territories because it wasn't practical. I mean, those people can be reached as often as your next door neighbor now. So I think with the option to sell any way possible, face-to-face, telephone, video, will get smarter. Companies will get smarter about what makes the most sense for this salesperson with that salesperson's role and the customers or the audiences or the market segments that they're calling on, and make the most of it. The other part is going to be how to deal with the economy. I think we're going to have big problems in 2022. I think with the policies of the Biden administration, with the increasing of taxes to corporations and taxes on the wealthy, with the business unfriendly moves like stopping the XL pipeline and costing 10,000 jobs and more of that, and more reliance on imports. I mean, gas prices have already gone up $1 a gallon in 5 months. The more and more of that stuff that starts to take hold, the more that's heading to, and the signs are already there. We're going to first see big companies, in anticipation of these problems, put on spending freezes. And that's going to affect the medium-sized companies that sell to them. And then there are going to be layoffs. And then the medium-sized companies are going to have spending freezes and layoffs. And then that's another whammo on the small businesses that sell to the medium companies. So I think that it's going to be much like 2008, 2009, 2010, that there's not going to be a lot of money that's going to be spent on anything other than what's required. So salespeople are going to have to be better than ever at creating urgency, differentiating from the competition, and being able to remove money from their prospects in order to survive. And the salespeople who had it easy from 2017 until the pandemic, and then navigated the pandemic, it's not going to be easy in 2022. I think we're going to see a big challenge in getting stuff sold, especially if it isn't must-have stuff.
Sure, absolutely. And to your point, when spending went down considerably during the Great Recession, 2008 and to 13, that's when inside sales really took off, right? Because companies couldn't afford to send a salesperson somewhere, so they started using phone banks and hiring inside salespeople to make calls and do the sales over the phone, or at least do all of the sales development work over the phone until the client was ready to be transitioned, or the prospect was ready to be transitioned to a client. So, it's a very strong possibility that that's going to happen again until your phone skills are amazing.
Absolutely. Bottom line is that salespeople are going to have to be better than ever just to hold their own.
Awesome. So this is the time in the show where I'd like you to talk about you, what you're working on, what you offer, and how folks can get in touch with you. So go ahead and tell us what we need to know about you. Well,
I'm 32, and I just look a little old for my age. I've been doing this for a couple of days. We've got some really incredible, easy, powerful ways to help salespeople succeed. We've been working on our self-directed courses to find a more economically friendly way for smaller businesses and individual salespeople to get the same help that we give to big corporations. And my book, as you mentioned, even though it was written in 2005, is as relevant today, maybe even more relevant today than it was 15, 16 years ago. My blog has my fresh thinking. So visit my blog at omghub.com.
Right there.
Visit my self-directed courses at baselineselling.thinkific.com. And we're giving away an ebook today. So if you email me at dkurlan@kurlanassociates.com, just like it's spelt there, and request the free ebook, we'll send you a copy of the free ebook.
Awesome.
It's a great time to be a salesperson.
It is. I mean, every time's a great time to be a salesperson. It's interesting. I was, because I'm working on a book myself for helping people overcome sales call reluctance. And once they do that, learn how to use the right phone skills, or the right skills over the phone to be successful. And in my research, what I found out is that in the United States, I think just the United States, but right, like for the year before the pandemic, I think it was
2019.
I think so. Yeah. So between 19 and 20, when the pandemic hit, there was $27.1 billion of unclosed business in the United States that was just literally sitting on the table waiting to be converted, that people did not convert. And you just wonder, how much would that have helped the economy and the people who were impacted by that if they could convert that business? So that just, I think that goes to show that there is a huge issue with, salespeople's ability to work the sales process and eventually convert people into sales.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else you want to add?
Oh yeah. Have a great summer.
Yeah, okay, cool.
We all deserve a great summer.
Yeah, exactly, for sure, right? Yeah. Listen, this has been an honor for me to have you on today. I've been following you for a couple of years, and You were even better than I thought you were going to be. So thank you very much. And any
Thank
final
you.
thoughts?
Thanks for inviting me. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to add before we go?
No, less is more.
I love it. Hey, that's Dave Kurlan. I'm Wally Bressler. This has been On the Phone. Hey there, this is Wally Bressler, and on behalf of my guest today, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this episode of On the Phone. If you'd like more information on how to overcome sales call reluctance, procrastination, and self-sabotage, and become an expert on the phone, go to www.phonesalessecrets.com. And if you'd like my free course on how to overcome sales call reluctance, please go to www.phonesalessecrets.com.